Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox. So, Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Yeah. Ooh, that. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Hey, so you know it's Tammi Mac. Hey, Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Growing up, we are taught to trust and respect police officers. And in turn, we expect them to keep us and our communities and families safe. But when it comes to the Black community, instead of viewing the police as our allies, we instead fear them and see them as a threat. Ugh. And sometimes even our enemies. Unarmed Black people from George Floyd, Dante Wright, to Breonna Taylor continue to be killed at traffic stops and in their homes for simply living their lives. Why do unarmed Black people continue to be seen as threats by the police? Well, tonight, the business of being Black are the killings of unarmed Black people by the police. Please welcome the founder and CEO of 221B Tactical, Suresh Madhavan. Hi, Suresh.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. NPR investigative correspondent and George Washington University investigative journalist, or rather journalism professional, Cheryl W. Thompson. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
The co-executive director of Black Visions Collective, Candace Montgomery. Hi, Candace.
Hi.
And former Buffalo, New York police officer, Cariol Horn. Hi, Cariol.
Hi.
According to
thanks for having me.
Thank you. We start each show with the same question, and I know that people who don't watch the show are going to think this host is crazy and stupid to ask this question, but I have to ask because it's the question we ask every night at the top of the show, and that is why? Why? Why should Black people care about Black people being killed who are unarmed by the police? Candace?
I'm glad that this is the conversation that we're able to start with. Black people should care about Black people, period. Black people have always had to look out for each other, had to hold down each other's back, and our lives are deeply interconnected. And so I think that it's important for us to care for each other regardless of our class or our gender or our economic status. And we should be caring for each other when we're alive, and especially when we are unjustly murdered. That is why I think our humanity dictates us to care deeply.
Suresh, why should Black people care?
You know, the number one human biology of humans is that we ultimately want to survive. Survival is the ultimate concern for human beings. And when you see things happening time and time again to people who look like you can't help but wonder, might I be next? I completely understand that, and I can understand the feeling. And if it was happening to, a few weeks ago that it was hashtag Stop Asian Hate. Well, I knew a few Asian people that I'm friendly with who kind of started walking down the street wondering, are they going to be targeted by someone? They weren't sure. They never had that concern before. Now, all of a sudden, it was a trending hashtag. So when reality hits and you start seeing things happening in society, targeting people who look like you, whether it was, a couple of weeks ago, the Asian hate, whether it was after 9/11, the Middle Eastern, the hatred toward the Middle Easterns, people who were from the Middle East, they were concerned. They were walking down the street. They didn't know if some crazy patriot guy was going to come out and harm them. And it did happen. So now we're seeing it with people of color. And you say to yourself, well, of course you understand why people say, oh, Why are they afraid of the police? Well, they're seeing what's happening to certain people, and they're saying, oh, that person was innocently shot, or that person was shot and maybe they were, they should have, been tased or whatever. And why were they shot? And they're saying, might that be me next? That person looks just like me.
Absolutely. Carriel, why should Black people care about unarmed Black people being killed at the hands of the police?
Well, we should care because we are taught that police are supposed to serve and protect us. So when they don't do that, then of course we definitely should care, because they shouldn't be on the job if they're not serving and protecting us.
Cheryl?
Yeah, we should care because it's happening way too often. One time is too many, but since 2015, it's happened 140 times at least, and that's way too many. And so that's why we should care, because it's happening over and over and over again, and it's going to continue to happen.
According to data from the research group Mapping Police Violence, 181 Black people have been killed by the police since the death of George Floyd. That was just last year. What does this say about the police? Carriel?
Well, it says that there has been no accountability, but now that we've had the Chauvin trial and he's been found guilty, maybe we can start having that conversation and change these laws so that we can have accountability.
Cheryl?
I agree with Carriel that there is a lack of accountability, and there always has been a lack of accountability with police. They rarely, Chauvin is certainly the exception in terms of police accountability for those who kill Black folk, and particularly those who fatally shoot Black folk, that they typically get away. They walk away without any punishment, or if they are punished, it's very light. It's not, one of the exceptions is probably Michael Slager, who killed Walter Scott in South Carolina. He got 20 years, but I don't believe it was for murder. I think it was for a civil rights violation.
Wow. Yeah, it's sad that sometimes they have to change the charges just to assure some type of accountability. Candace, how do you feel about that?
I think that it shows to us that policing is working exactly how it was designed. It makes us remember the actual history of policing, which derives from slave catchers and then union busters, that the institution of policing itself, it's not actually about individual bad cops, is working in the type of pattern, right? So the definition of crazy is trying to do something different over and over, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I think that we continue to expect a different result from policing when it's doing exactly what it was designed for. And so 100 and however many killings in less than a year tells me that regardless of quote unquote accountability or small reforms, we're going to continue to get the same result unless we eradicate this institution.
181 since the death of George Floyd. Suresh, what does this say about the police?
Well, I think you have to look at it's 181, but I think, as everyone would agree, you have to look at the circumstances of every situation. If there's a situation where I'm on the job and I'm working as a police officer and someone points a weapon at me or, fires a shot at me and I have to return fire, and subsequently that suspect is killed, well, then I don't know if you can count that toward 181. Now, 181 people who were completely unarmed, meaning they had no weapon on them, no knife, no gun, no threat at all, and they were just simply unarmed. And something happened during the course of their interaction with the police that led to the police shooting them and killing them. That's a problem. But I don't know if that 181 number is that. It's a shocking statistic that I've never heard. But I think with many statistics that are thrown out there, you have to look at what did those incidents, because I'll tell you what, I'd like to go home at the end of the night. And I don't care what color you are. If you point a gun at me and you shoot at me, or you point a gun at me and you're about to shoot at me, yes, I'm going to shoot back and try to stop you from killing me. That's my job, is to survive and protect. But if that's not the case, and you have no weapon, you're completely unarmed, your hands are up, and you have nothing in your hands, you're not a threat, and you're even running away from the police, and then you're shot, well, then that's a different story. And that is where we need to now look at retraining.
You know what, Suresh, though, here is where I say the rubber meets the road. And I hear you talking about, if you're armed and police, it's between you and the police's life, the police should shoot. But if you're not armed, if you're unarmed, that's a different story. And the problem here is, and I want to use the Ma'Khia Bryant situation, the young woman in the little girl in Ohio who was just shot and killed. There are people who say, I would have done the same thing. She should have been killed. She had a knife. She was going to kill somebody else. And there were people that said, well, he could have used a taser. This is the problem when police consistently kill unarmed Black people. Black people consciously cannot detect the difference between when it's right and when it's wrong, because we are so accustomed to the police killing us that it's very hard to take your side. It's very hard to trust that when you say, oh, no, I had to shoot that Black person, is the truth. When we even look at George Floyd, which just recently, the police report came out, and the police report never said or mentioned anyone's knee on that man's neck. The entire police report was false. And so it's these things that allow us to distrust the police in a real way, so that when it is justified that they shoot and kill someone, it's very hard for us to believe. We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight, the business of being Black, it's a rough one, y'all. It's a rough one. Unarmed Black people being killed by the police. That is the business of being Black tonight. And when I put on my glasses, what that means I'm headed to the chat room. Joy Swanson says we should care because we're in 2021. Why do we still have to deal with this injustice? Nat Turner says we Black people should come together to protect our community, arm ourselves. This is a state sanctionized genocide. This foolish government is allowing this, and we must be against the better organization. Ooh, okay. You got some real words, Nat Turner. Incog says no amount of money insulates a Black person from being targeted. Professor Charles Ogletree interviewed astute Black men from prestigious colleges and institutions, and they all told about being profiled. I think it's very common, and I think everyone knows by now the racial profiling that goes on with Black people when it comes to the police. Derek Chauvin was found guilty, but jail is too good for him. His punishment should be a knee to the neck while handcuffed with his face pushed into the concrete for 9 minutes, 29 seconds to see if he lives. Woo, okay. And Monica says overkill in too many instances and shoot to kill. Why? It's hard to believe. Here's another thing. Here's another problem when we talk about police killing unarmed Black people. It's hard to believe that. I would love to believe that there are instances where you can't think, or you think too fast, or other people are quarterbacking the situation, and we're being backseat drivers, and you never know what you would do in that situation. I wholeheartedly agree that you never know what you would do in a situation when put in that situation, and particularly when it's life or death situations like police are oftentimes in, right? But what is befuddling are the amounts of videos that go out where white men who have weapons end up alive all the time. I look at Kyle Rittenhouse. I compare the whole Ma'Khia Bryant to Kyle Rittenhouse. When people say, but she had a knife, I'm thinking Kyle Rittenhouse was in the middle of the street, in the middle of a protest with a gun, killing people, like literally. And the police did nothing. They let him walk the streets. As a matter of fact, we have found out now that police donated to his GoFundMe. So when you have situations like that, how do you then justify when Black people are killed at the hands of the police? How do you justify that, Cheryl? Did I say too much? Oh, okay. Cheryl's a little frozen there. We'll get back to Cheryl. Are you there, Cheryl? She's a little frozen.
I'm having video.
She's a little frozen. So let's go to Candace there. Candace.
I mean, Tammy, I think you already know that I can't justify that. I think it's, there is no reason. I don't think that anyone deserves to be murdered, really for any reason, quite frankly. And that's just that's my belief. And I think that that's also the belief that I carry with me from my ancestors. So I think that it's important to understand that regardless of the situation, whether someone has a knife or they don't, they're completely unarmed, they're running away, they do not deserve to be murdered for any type of crime. And that we need to be really looking at how do we over-criminalize Black bodies. But yet, like you said, a white person can literally walk around with an assault rifle, and that is somehow not seen as dangerous or life-threatening after murdering multiple people, oftentimes in broad daylight. There's no way, if that was a Black person, that they would ever live. And so why aren't Black people even treated with the same amount of dignity? And I know that's terrible to say about anybody who just murdered multiple people, but why do white people get that treatment and Black people don't? I think we really need to be asking ourselves that question, and that
I'm with you on that. I think that is the question that Black people are asking. We're not saying anybody should be killed or not be killed in certain situations. We're saying, why is it that you can discern when a white person is doing something versus a Black person? You shoot to kill at the drop of a dime. I was watching another video of a white man who was at a traffic stop, and he literally had a gun, and the police saw the gun and said, he's got a gun. And the police pulled his gun out. And the white man said, well, if you're going to pull your gun out, I'm gonna pull my gun out. And he said, don't touch the gun. Don't touch the gun. And he said, no, but you got your gun. He said, don't touch the gun. He said, but you have your gun. And the police officer literally said these words: can you just get out of the car so we can talk about this? Can you just get out of the car so we can talk about this? And this is what we are talking about. We need police officers to see Black people as human beings first, before criminals. Because they oftentimes see white people as human beings first and criminals thereafter. Carrie-Ann, what do you think about all of this conversation here? What sets the tone of police officers using deadly force versus non-deadly force?
The tone is set in the academy. So it's the training. You taught to shoot to kill. And in that situation, from the training that I got, I agree with what the officer did, because it was a split-second decision and the girl had a knife. Now, of course, because we see so many people being killed by the police who are unarmed, I wanted to justify that. I didn't want to give the officer a pass at all, but I have to be real about it. And that's from the training. So if we don't agree with what he did, then we need to change the training. As far as the mindset, that comes home training. And I remember going on a call where the white kids were called a group and the Black kids were called a gang. So it was a separate calls, of course, on separate sides of the city. where the white kids are or where the black kids are. And then I realized that a lot of time that the narrative given to our black kids was different than the white kids. I was on a car chase, and I myself put out the description of a black male with dark clothing. I didn't even see him. Jumped in the car, he ran, and it was over by Martin Luther King School. So who runs over by Martin Luther King School? Somebody black. It wound up being a white kid. The white officers from South Buffalo were so mad at this kid. South Buffalo here in Buffalo was where the white people lived. So they were so upset, and they wanted to like punish him by giving him a whooping like they give the black people with a flashlight to the head. But, you know, pretty much a few punches here and there, and I was free to take him in. It wasn't like I felt comfortable going to tell anybody what they did. It was like that was the culture. So the culture on the department needs to change, as well as the training, as well as the mindset of the officers.
Yeah, the biased thoughts, the preconceived notions of who black.
You definitely need more.
But you saw that
you saw psychological exams.
You saw the young kid carry on in a certain area and just assumed that he was black. Right?
I did. And so exactly. And that is from being around from the training and from the culture of the job.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's as if police can do no wrong. There are not a such thing as mistakes, and if there are mistakes, they're hidden under the rug so that nobody ever finds out. But nobody's perfect. You're living in a human body, so you're a human being first, and you're a police officer second. You know, so you are prone to mistakes as a police officer, right?
You are, but when the mistakes are you pulling out a taser as opposed to a gun, then you need to be held accountable. It's like anybody else would have, would be held accountable if they killed someone.
Right.
And then especially if you've had training.
Absolutely. Suresh, weigh in here. What do you have? When looking at unarmed Black people killed by the police, it's very hard for those who have never done the job to talk about what they would have done in a given situation. Every year, countless police officers are forced to make split-second decisions. Sadly, many of these result in the death of a Black man. So after watching the body cam footage of 20-year-old Dante Wright, and where the actions of that officer based on a split decision or an internal bias?
I want to address something here, completely from a neutral standpoint. What I think people are not realizing and are not shown, there are hundreds, if not into the thousands, of white men that the police shoot and kill with multiple bullets every year, but they never show that. So I don't want to make it seem like we're in a society where white people never get killed by the police. I've seen it. And it's only Black people that get shot up by the police. That's just not true. There are plenty of white people that get shot up with a lot of bullets by the police across this country every year.
Unarmed?
What's that?
Unarmed?
Armed and unarmed. But we just never hear about it. We hear about the incidents, of course, when it involves a Black male or a Black female. But the statistics are out there. I'm not making it up. Everyone can go see how many unarmed, how many Caucasian people were shot and killed by the police in 2020. And then you can now dig a little deeper and say, were they armed? And if they were armed, what were they armed with? And the FBI reporting shows that. But the FBI
reporting also shows that Black men are disproportionately.
I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm not saying that's not the case. There's, people are saying, oh, more white people are killed than Black people. But when you look at the ratio, the ratios are off. And you're right on that. However, I don't want to sit here and pretend that no white people are being shot and killed by the police. Only Black people are being shot. That's just simply not true. The other thing that I want to address is there's some things that about the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. There, and the other thing about the Dylan, whatever his name was, that shot up all those people in that church, I think in South Carolina. There's a couple of fallacies out there that need to be addressed. First of all, Kyle Rittenhouse was not being placed under arrest by the police and then pulled out a gun, and the police were like, "Oh, hold on, just please put your gun down." No, Kyle Rittenhouse was walking around in a place where it was legal to carry a rifle. There was 100 other people walking around with rifles, and when it came and the incident happened, the police didn't even know it was him who was involved in that incident. That's why a couple of days later, he turned himself in. There was not a confrontation with Mr. Rittenhouse and the cops, and they said, "There's that guy. He just shot 2 people, but just let him walk away." That's just not the case. It's just not true. They had no idea that that kid had just shot 2 people, and there were cops around, but they had no idea. And that's why he was one of many white guys walking around with a rifle. They had no idea what had happened, and he left the area. They later identified him, and he turned himself in. It was not a motor vehicle stop where they said, "Sir, get out of the car, Mr. Rittenhouse." And he said, "No, I'm not getting out of the car. I got this gun." And they were like, "Please put the gun down. We're not going to shoot." There wasn't that. With the man who shot the people in the church, people say, "Oh, the cops didn't shoot him. They arrested him and they took him to McDonald's." Well, that's just simply not true. He went and he hid. The cops located him. The cops located him. He surrendered without a weapon. He surrendered. He didn't resist arrest. He didn't run. They placed him under arrest. The local guidelines say when someone is in custody for more than X hours, you must feed them. Whether they are male, female, Black, white, you must feed a prisoner after a certain amount of hours in custody. He exceeded that time.
I think we all know it matters not whether he surrendered or not. How many black people surrender and still get shot and killed? And that is what we are talking about. We're talking about why are the standards so different? You're painting them as if they're equal, and they're simply not equal. When George Floyd surrendered. There have been plenty of people who have surrendered to the police and still got shot and killed dead. When it comes, I'm not
disputing that.
Let's go to break real quick, and we'll come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black are unarmed Black people being killed by police. If you want to see more of this Fox Soul content, subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you hit that notification bell to get all the best updates and new videos and live shows. Also, let us know how you're feeling. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and tell us how you feel in the comment section. If you're just joining me, I've been talking to the founder and CEO of 221 Be Tactical, Suresh Madhavan. Hi, Suresh. NPR investigative correspondent, George Washington University investigative journalism professor, Cheryl W. Thompson, the co-executive director of Black Visions Collective, Candace Montgomery, and former Buffalo police officer, Carrie Horn, about unarmed Black people being killed by the police. Cheryl, take it away.
Okay, so before we went to break, Suresh, I want to be with you. I was like, here, what is your point? Like, I didn't understand your point and your comparison and how
which point? Help me explain. Which point exactly?
The whites being killed versus the Blacks being killed by police.
The only point I'm making, I understand that it's disproportionate based on, interactions and things of that nature. I understand there's a disparity there. What I was saying was, as a society, what we're being fed is the police are only shooting and killing unarmed Black people, and they never shoot white people. And that is simply not true. As we know, we're not ratio-wise, it's off, but numbers-wise, the police shoot and kill more armed and unarmed white people than anyone ever even knows about and ever talks about. That's not my opinion. That's just a fact that's on paper.
Candace,
police-
you're squirming in your seat, Candace. Go for it.
I just think to the point here, like I'm not really understanding why we're making this comparison. And I think that really it's just an opportunity to distract us from the actual conversation that needs to be had. And this often happens is like, oh, but this happens to everybody. But no, literally Black women teach their sons how to go outside of their home and go to the grocery store safely. That's not the reality for white parents. It's absolutely not. These are different lived conditions. And so we can look at the numbers, we can look at the facts, but people know this in their bodies. They know this in their actual lived experience. They know this as part of Black culture. Black culture even knows it, that we have to figure out how to protect ourselves from those who are supposed to be protecting and serving. And so I just think that it's super redundant, and it's not actually getting us anywhere by saying, well, yeah, of course, white people get killed too. But, at the same time, like, the other thing I will say is I don't think that anyone is saying that that's not true. I think that actually when people are looking at the issue of policing, they're saying fundamentally something is wrong with this institution because of the ways that it targets Black people. But we also can see the ways that it targets brown people and Indigenous people. And now Black girls, right? So I think that that's really like at the heart of this issue. And it's a distraction to just look at the numbers when we are ignoring the reality.
Yeah.
Carry on. I'm sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I was going to say, and these Black people who are being killed, they're being killed most often by white police officers. Right. That's not to say Black officers don't kill, but they're 75% I found in my story of the 135 Black men and women who were fatally shot by police. 75% of the shooters were white officers. And
but Cheryl, let me ask you, why don't we hear ever when a Black officer shoots and kills a completely unarmed Black man? Why do we never hear about it?
I don't know that we don't.
Does it happen?
It happens
I also
all
think
the
that's
time.
not true. Actually, in fact, well, not the case of a black officer killing a Black man, but in the case of Justine Diamond right here in Minneapolis, we heard all about it. It's actually, in fact, one of the only cases in which an officer accountable in any particular way, if that's what you think about in terms of accountability. But it was a massive case. Millions of dollars were raised on behalf of her family. And it is definitely because it was a Black man who shot a white woman. And if it was the other way around, which it oftentimes is, we do not get the same amount of traction. We do not see the same amount of accountability, period, And so I also think that it's really, it's an anti-Black narrative. And I really, like Sharess, I want to offer, like, it's important for us to really think about how we have internalized racism and think about the ways in which we actually navigate the world through, the oppressive forces that have been put on us, to believe that our biggest issue and concern is whether or not sometimes Black people also kill Black people, when we know the reality of the situation based off of the facts, based off of our lived experiences.
Carry on.
Yeah, I like to use an analogy. If there's three houses next to each other, you have the middle house, the left house, the right house. Middle house is on fire. Then the middle house says middle houses matter. And then you have the left house, well, left houses matter. And then you have the right house and well, right houses matter. Well, if you don't put the fire out middle house, then all of the houses are going to be on fire. So we have going on with Black lives. So that's why we need to pay attention to lives. Everything that he's saying, I'm not even saying that it's not true, but when you do look at the lives being taken, it's white male officers taking Black lives, whether it's a child, a male or a female, normally a white officer. Not to say that any of the other things don't happen, but after in the right houses, we need to deal with the middle house right now.
Suresh, I think you agree that that Black people are disproportionately killed, and particularly unarmed Black people are disproportionately killed at the hands of the police. But I do want to ask you, what do you think is the solution? How do we handle the disproportionality of it all? Or should it just go away? Should we just say, oh, well, it's just a few? Like, there has to be a solution, because we do acknowledge that it's a problem, right?
We do. It is a problem. It is disproportionate. We have a society where the media shows the crimes occurring, this crime statistics, and they're always focusing on Black crime. They're always putting the Black man on the news who robbed the liquor store, or did this, or murdered this one, gang violence, gang shooting. This one shoots a little girl. We all we see is that in the news and the media. So then you have these group of white cops that didn't grow up in those neighborhoods, didn't grow up with that. So they're only thinking, when they become a police officer, they see Black folks as like these inherent criminals that are, hey, we're in a white neighborhood and a car full of Black kids go by. They must be up to no good. They must be up to no good, because everything I've seen growing up as a child, my whole life watching TV and this and that, is Black people committing crime.
So then how can that, it seems that that's a solution that's internal. How do we find a solution? How do we force somebody to not see us in the way in which they see us? How is that our problem?
That's right.
I will say that that's one point I agree with Suresh on. The problem is, I think that these white officers, they're afraid of us because of some of the things they've been told. They're not used to growing up with us. They're not used to worshiping in the places we worship. They're not used to going to school with us. And so they only know what they see, which is so skewed. Right.
It's so skewed.
So that's part of the problem, is they need to learn more. We're not like some anomaly. We've been around a long time.
Tammi, let me tell you something. I don't mean to cut you off, Cheryl, and you are right on the money. Tammi,
she agreed with me. I am
right on the money. Let me tell you something. You know where all of that goes out the window? When you play sports in college and you see a white kid from Nebraska roomed up with a Black kid from Illinois, that they have no idea about each other. But you will see within a few weeks that they become close friends, because they're learning about each other. And they realize in that intimate setting, hey, we're not so different after all.
So are you suggesting that we get all of the white cops to go to school and be roommates with Black men? Like, what
Cheryl was saying was
don't put this on me, Sherette.
He was 100% correct. There's no recognition of what I have in common with you, what you have in common with me. The only recognition is what the media is putting out there, that it's all these Black people committing crimes and shooting up in the hood and everything. And you got these white cops that come in and they're like, the only thing they know is, man, I see a Black person and I just relate that to crime, a life of crime, committing crime. And now I'm scared. I'm nervous. I just automatically think that this Black person, they shoot people, so they must have a gun on them. So now I got my hand on my gun and I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm like, hey, don't move. Let me see your hands.
And what we're saying is that is problematic. And if that is what the police force is made of, then that just shows that what we say is true. They do not protect and serve us. And it's very difficult for them to actually do that job if they don't even know us, if we're all criminals. That it's impossible.
That's why
Carry on. We want to talk about your we would love to talk about your story next, Carry on. So when we come back, we'll find out exactly why she was fired and why she was refused her pension. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black are unarmed Black people being killed by the police. Cheryl, you have a solution?
Well, I don't know whether I have a solution, but I think one thing that could help this, because there's clearly help is needed, right? Because every day now, I mean, just this year alone, what, 4 or 5 Black people since January, I mean, do the math, have been killed unarmed by police. It's crazy. So, and we were talking earlier about how, you know, white officers aren't used to, they don't grow up in our neighborhood, they don't worship with us, etc. You know, we've got to build a better relationship between police and the community. I mean, that has to be done. Can it be done? I think it can be done. I think it can. How you go about that, you know, that's up to the police departments, but I certainly think that's a step in the right direction, is to
Yeah,
start
I'm kind of
building
done with that part of the game, Cheryl. I think the only way that it can be done is by policy changes. Trevor Noah said it's not about good apples and bad apples at this point. At this point, it's about pulling the root up from the whole damn tree. And that's what has to be done. We have to pull the root up from the whole tree, and we have to set different standards, different regulations. We have to place some financial accountability on the police. But I don't want to get too far into that before we get to this, because Cario, you finally received your pension as well as back pay and your benefits after being fired from the police department. So please take us through that journey. What happened? Why were you let go?
Okay. First, I want to just touch on what a solution that you were talking about before, which is diversity training, to go exams more often, and the officers need to live in the city that they patrol. That will help on the cops getting to know the people instead of looking at them or looking at us
as criminals.
As exactly.
Right.
And so as far as my story is concerned, of course, I stopped an officer from choking a handcuffed man, and Neil Mac lives today because of that. And then I was fired. The other officer, he was promoted. He continued to beat on people. He took another officer that was on duty, and he eventually went to federal prison for 4 months for slamming the heads of teens into the patrol car. This is way after I had said that he punched me in the face and killed Mac, who was handcuffed. He receives a pay. So although I just received this decision to overturn firing, I still don't have a pension. So I'm still waiting until all the kinks are up. And of course, you know, in 2016, I decided that I wanted to find a solution, because I said, if I can't, how can I help other people if I can't help myself? Because people will come to me asking for advice. So I decided, you know, that I would write out what I thought the solution was, which is Cario's Law, which was passed last year in October of 2020. So just like my attorney, Intisar Rob, says, you know, in 2020, they got 2020 vision. So they decided to do the right thing.
So what is Cario's Law?
So Cario's Law is the duty to intervene, but it also, the way it's written is that it has a registry, but the city did not adopt that part. With the registry, bad officers will have to register, just like a sex offender. They register, they can't go from Buffalo to like Rochester and get a job, or from Buffalo. That's why it needs to be nationwide, from Buffalo, New York to Los Angeles, California. They can't do that if they're on this registry and they're a bad officer. So we need to include that. It needs to be amended. And also, you know, it's falsifying paperwork. And then what helped me, basically, I wrote my own freedom papers, because they used Cario's Law in my decision, because it goes back 20 years to basically restore someone who had done what I did.
Oh. That's great. So you tell me about this freedom carry. Yeah, tell us.
I said I basically wrote my own.
In
Say it
Carrio's
again?
law, because you utilize Carrio's law to get your pension back.
Yeah, so the attorneys used it as well as, and I will probably butcher the name, but something like non-pro-tunc, which is basically go back in time and fix
Right.
what was wrong. And also Carrio's law, which gives the institution or whatever, gives me the right, or any other officer that was done wrong, the right to go back into an institution, which is like a court or whatever.
Yeah, totally
And-
understand.
and
Yeah, I understand.
haven't looked
The
at-
law is retroactive, so if it's ever
Exactly.
happened, you can apply that law, and you will get your pension, or
And it
you
goes back 20 years. I will. I am pension eligible now. So basically what that means is that from the date and time that they fired me, they have to pretty much put me back into that position, which would be police officer.
Well,
So
congratulations on that.
now
And
they have to work out the kinks.
I hate saying congratulations because it should have never happened in the first place, you know? It just shouldn't have happened in the first place. So to say congratulations is a little bittersweet for me, but I'm glad I'm glad you found out where the money reside. We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Listen, we didn't touch half of what we should have touched tonight when it comes to unarmed Black people being killed at the hands of the police. But hopefully we have tackled some solutions that could potentially help us in our fight. Candace, please tell us what the Black Visions Collective and their mission is. What is Black Visions Collective?
Well, Black Visions is a Black-led, queer and trans-centering community organization based here in Minneapolis. And right now, our work has really been around divesting from violent policing in order to be able to invest in true community safety and look at the holistic approach of what actually keeps communities safe, like ensuring people have housing and jobs and other things, healthcare, instead of wasting, at least for us here in Minneapolis, $190 million on policing that is saying it's keeping us more safe. It's saying it's reducing crime, but ultimately it's not. So that is much of our work. And we're also a membership-based organization, really investing in the leadership of young Black, especially queer and trans people.
Cheryl, how is it we can support you and follow your journalistic work?
Well, I just try to, look into, my job is to hold people accountable. And whether that's police departments or, other government agencies, that's what I do. I did want to say a quick thing to Candace about, you talk about like sort of defunding the police, right, by reinvesting that money somewhere else. Didn't the city council, after George Floyd killing, didn't the city council vote to support disbanding the police department and then replacing it with a new public safety model? Whatever happened to that?
That is actually in process. So we were just able to get over 20,000 signatures from Minneapolis residents to move that initiative forward. And we're hoping for voters to actually be able to decide the future of public safety in Minneapolis in November. So hopefully folks can look out for that success this year. And that will basically change our city's charter to develop the Department of Public Safety that will take on a public health approach to addressing crime and harm and safety here in the city. So that's still happening, still going. We're looking forward to being able to transform the way we do things here.
Thank you for bringing that up, Cheryl. I appreciate it so much. Suresh, please tell us about 221 Tactical.
A few years into the job, I decided that I was tired of sweating in my bulletproof vest because it was hot as you know what. But I promised my mom, single mom, raised me and she said, you better wear that vest every day on the job. I don't care where you're working. So I patented and developed a product that helps you stay cool and dry. And now it's a full-blown company. We provide gear to police, military, and private contractors across the country, around the world. and to help keep them safer while on the job. And now we're into the civilian world where we're helping with people who are just regular contractors, things like that, keeping their hands safe with protective gloves with material that didn't exist before. So we're into some commercial and industrial spaces now too. And, just very, very blessed that, I used the experience from the job to create this company. And now we operate in 33 different countries, over 200 retail locations. So started in my garage in New Jersey and started from the bottom. Now we're here in New York City, Times Square. So, it's an honor to take care of, our officers and keep them safe and beyond, our military and other people. But, our goal also is to educate people. We want to make sure that education, it doesn't matter how good the gear is or how Gucci your gear is. If you don't have proper training, the gear doesn't mean anything. So
are you still a police officer or no?
I'm not. No, I did 13 years. And, to me, that's the biggest breakdown. We need better training. We need more training. We need better diversity training.
We need better policies. We need more accountability laws, and we need to remove police immunity. That's what we need. We need police to be financially responsible, and we need police who believe in people. That's what we need to. So I don't know about all that training. Y'all had training. Yeah. Look, y'all trained. Y'all do it right. Everything you do is right. Y'all train. That's good.
I don't know if everything you do is right.
But when you don't follow your training, that's what needs to happen. I love police officers. They've been good to me. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Carrie, y'all, for being on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Until tomorrow, it's a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.